We're going over system concepts, Article 37, Egoism in the Work, Part 8. The following phases are the posterior to crossing the barrier. Every darkness and spirit desire is a precursor to the unformed and chaotic desires of the following phase. Darkness desires are always felt as a deficiency towards the future. Spirit desires are anticipation towards the internal power of the next degree. Vulnerable desires. We have been successful at internalizing the complete spectrum of egoism in potential. At this point, we work to internalize the will to bestow, the Creator. This is the catalyst for the unification between the altruism, He is one, and egoism, His name is one, within us. It is very important to learn how to love ourselves. We tend to think that we are good people because we have altruistic aspirations before the barrier. It is crucial to understand that we have nothing of the quality of bestowal before crossing the spiritual barrier. An important tactic in this phase is to act normally externally, but behave extremely selfish internally, and amplify the intention for self alone. This is why we feel vulnerable, because we realize that we only have the will to receive without any bestowal whatsoever. And here's a quote: "A good order of development for love. At first, one should become strong in loving oneself to the fullest degree, because the nature of a human being from infancy is to be lazy. And even when it comes to our own good, we are comfortable to neglect the work. This is why there is jealousy, lust, pride." Altruism depends on egoism. After this, it is necessary to climb up the above-mentioned stages to the same degree that one has already attained and earned for oneself. As it is said, love your friend as yourself. And regarding the foreigners, it is said, and you shall love him as yourself. This means that from the start, a person must work to love himself, as a person also causes and awakens his self-love each and every day because of his laziness and irresponsibility. It is only after he acquires the narrow egoism, namely the excessive self-love, then he can extend that love to include others in it. With this, you can understand that true altruism depends on excessive egoism. Anyone who has not attained love of himself in the full sense of the word, but rather is a person of no consequence or a person of no importance, does not even have the seed of love. And whoever extends his love of self, and then through education extends it to love others, such a person is the real great and true person. From the article One Precept by Bala Sulam. Focusing intensively on our internality will build the correct vessel, desire, for attaining the quality of bestowal. We have a tendency to become complacent and help others with their advancement instead of focusing on our own. There will be plenty of time to be altruistic after the barrier. It is important to not delude ourselves into thinking we have already reached the desired milestone. We need to feel the lack and deficiency because it will motivate us forward into utilizing everything at our disposal. These desires for shedding the false pretense of bestowal are called vulnerable desires. They are considered the darkness desires of the individual, phase 4.3. Elevated desires. We cannot cross the barrier out of pain and frustration, being pushed from behind. Instead, we need to develop the pulling force, which is the importance of the goal. Pain can only push us so far. We need the intensity that only the reward of internal power can fulfill. Here's a quote: "The matter of the unification of the Creator and divinity that one induces when he has had his fill of yearning and longing is precisely like the underside coupling, applying in the birth of a corporeal body. It too extends necessarily by cause and effect, meaning the hardening that is a certain measure of longing and yearning, called hardness in the corporeal tongue. Then one's seed is also blessed, for it shoots like an arrow, nefesh, soul, shana, year, olam, world." This is the meaning of how is there repentance? In the same place, at the same time, with the same woman, since hey tata'a, the lower hey, consists of nefesh, shana, olam. Nefesh is the measure of the longing and the yearning. Shana is the changing stimulations, as complete coitus bears the complete measure to restore past glory, meaning as they were cohesive before they were separated in the corporeal world. However, one cannot be ready for this sublime mating, called complete coitus, all at once. Rather, surely goodness and mercy. from letter number 19 by Balasulam. The main battle in this phase is to accept all the qualities that exist for correct usage in the future. Normally it manifests into a specific person that personifies the main quality that triggers our pain point. Once we have combined the full egoism of the left line with the acceptance of the right line, we create a unified effort, the middle line, that propels us across the barrier. Once we have successfully acquired the needed intensity, we reach a state of elevation and sublimity, since we have full confidence in the reward of the quality of bestowal. The first sensation when we cross the barrier is loss of that elevation. Instead, we feel disoriented and empty. Our sense of self has shifted from the domain of egoism to the domain of altruism. These desires for accepting and potential the full quota of work are called elevated desires. They're considered the spirit desires of the individual, phase 4.4. And here's the first question. Why does the ego have to go through so many phases? Caesar.
So the ego is a tool, you know. So we have to. As it grows, you know, we have to use his I don't know. So you know, the ego is just a tool, you know. So it's helped us goes through many phases, you know. We have to, you know, to grow a perception, you know. So it's just you know, that's the way I see it, you know.
Maria.
I don't know, man. That was a bad one.
The ego has to go through all of the phases in order to create a more pushing force to build this tension, to bring this point of the heart out of it. So it has to go through all of these evolving phases of unformed chaotic darkness, and until we get to the spirit. But it's all part of the process.
Mary.
It has to go through the phases to develop and get to bigger and stronger. A little at a time, it grows, and then we add the right line, and then it grows again. The ego grows again, and then we add the right line, and we keep advancing using, you know, the left and the right. So, and the ego grows each time to either push us forward or we're pulled forward.
Moshe.
Well, I would say that the ego has to go through many development phases, because what happens is that it actually accrues new details and discernments along the way, and it becomes more refined as well. So it needs to go through that to get those details and see it and use it more and more correctly.
Robin.
I would just add, it has to grow through all of these phases. It has to get as big as it possibly can in order to desire to cross the barrier, to push it, and also that the will to receive wants to actually cross the barrier. It has to be cleaned, has to be seen and cleaned before you go across the barrier, I think.
All the phases that we go through, it's not like we cross the barrier and then we don't need those phases anymore. They continue to exist in the concepts that we've attained on each of those degrees before the barrier. We could become concepts that we actually use after the barrier as well. So it's not just like, oh, you know, why can't we just make it one step and then we'll cross? The idea is that all the phases before the barrier are the sort of the workspace, the area that you're going to be working with afterwards. So all the degrees that you deal with after the barrier are just implementation of all the potential that you've built before the barrier. So we're basically building all these phases of potential in our development, and then what we're going to be dealing with after the barrier is actually implementing all those potential into actuality. Second question, why do we need to feel that we have no bestowal before the barrier? Caesar. Caesar, you're muted.
Because before the barrier, you build all the potential, so you don't have any bestowing before the barrier. So after the barrier, so you're gonna put this, actually, use the actual desire power.
Maria.
Well, there's a difference between feeling that you have no bestowal and actually not having any bestowal. We tend to kid ourselves. We tend to form excuses. We tend to, for some reason, maybe fear what it takes to cross the barrier. So we want to maybe give ourselves an illusion that we are already there, that we already have some minimal quantity of bestowal, that therefore there's no hurry, there's no rush, and so forth. So I think we have to make sure that we remind ourselves in clean concepts in order to realize through the scrutiny that we actually, before the barrier, we don't have any bestowal. And that also will help increase the need for crossing the barrier and grow this anticipation that is needed to pull ourselves, not to be pushed towards the crossing of the barrier.
Mary.
We need to feel that we have no bestowal. Beforehand, we need to feel that, we want it, we need to try and bestow and realize we can't, and feel the feeling of not having it, and while we also have the importance of wanting it and needing it, so that brings us to a state of feeling vulnerable that we don't have it, because we know that we want it and need it. So it advances us and pulls us forward.
Moshe.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's just about having a lack, and then, growing that lack as well, because that desire is what's going to basically force you forward. And without that lack, there really is no reason for you to get it in the first place. So I would say, as the more you advance as well, that lack grows even more, and then that's kind of important, because it's about also growing that importance of the goal of having bestowal. And the greater that importance is, the greater force you have to actually want it and persevere through any situations that come your way.
Robin.
I would add this, that it's a trick of the ego to think you can bestow or want to bestow or try to bestow before the barrier. It diverts you from the real goal. It's filling. It makes you feel better that you might be able to do it, or it's a waste of time, and it's like it's pointed out, it drains you, it saps your energy for the real purpose and diverts everything. So you can't bestow until you have bestowal.
There's a saying, you never miss the water until it's gone. The idea is that in order to desire something, you first have to feel that you don't actually have it. And if you ask a lot of people, do they want to cross the spiritual barrier? They'll say, of course. But the idea is that they don't actually feel that they haven't crossed the barrier, and therefore their desire to say that they do want to cross the barrier is futile. It doesn't work. So the idea is that you have to feel that you have no bestowal, which means the quality of the Creator, which is bestowal. You have to feel that you don't have it in order to actually desire it. And you can't go from one sensation of fake bestowal, which is when you think, oh, I give to other people charity, I'm a nice person, I do nice acts. You can't move from that state to suddenly crossing the barrier. You need in between that, you need that darkness, you need that deficiency of that that the quality of bestowal that I want, I don't currently have. And if you don't go through that stage of that deficiency, then you never actually get it. you never actually are able to cross the barrier since you don't actually have a deficiency for it. You don't actually need to cross the barrier. Third question, why can we only cross the barrier as an adornment? Maria.
We can only cross it as an adornment because we now have to pull ourselves to really wanting it, meaning we've already at this point like owned and accepted all of the ego and for what it is, for where we're currently at, and there most likely is nothing already as far as being a problem. We're cleaning all these conduits, so everything is actually going okay, and that's why we're not going to be pushed. So therefore, we now need to pull ourselves towards that goal to really cross the barrier. So I guess that's what it would be. It would be an adornment.
Mary.
Because we need it as an adornment because we don't advance from pain. We can't have the right attitude if we're in pain. We're not accepting our current state and probably have anger or whatever. We're not very happy. So we have to be in a state where we're thinking about as best as we can about bestowing to the Creator and adhesion, and we just everything is already in alignment, and we just want this added gift of bestowal on top of what we already have because of the importance we feel.
Moshe.
Well, it's the reason is it has to be through an adornment is because when you cross the barrier and become the creator, you basically have no more lack anymore. I mean, the creator has no lacks, has no deficiencies, and you have to be in that same sense, in that same state of no deficiencies. And an adornment basically is that state of having, a lack of deficiency. So it's about going from perfection to perfection and basically being on the light side, on the front side, and then pass the barrier that way.
Robin.
Well, when you're in a state, when your ego has grown enough that you are at that position where you're not being pushed from behind any longer, you're feeling pretty good. And so you have to reach higher. You have to, like Maria said, you have to pull yourself from up rather than being pushed from behind. So it's something extra because you feel wonderful before, and it's something extra. You have to want that extra adornment to be able to do it.
And you would think that someone would, be reaching, 4.4.2. He's just about to cross the barrier. You think that they'd have this huge desire to want to cross the barrier. And what actually happens is they actually lose it all. They actually feel very comfortable where they are. And that's on purpose. So they'll want to cross the barrier because they want the barrier, not because they're in pain. So you can't cross the barrier that you're in pain, because that's like saying, it's like you're going on a date and then you say to the woman, oh, the reason I want to be with you is because I don't want to be alone. So what you're saying is you're saying that it's got nothing to do with the qualities of the woman you're dating, but rather it's just your current state. And that's not good enough. You need to have importance of the future, not the deficiency of your present state. So you need to sort of find even though you've got that coarseness which says everything's fine right now, you need to find an adornment. You need to find extra things. What are you going to get out of internal power that you don't need to cross the barrier? You want to cross the barrier. You desire to cross the barrier. It's something that you don't need. It's an extra. It's an extra that you really desire, like jewelry. It's not a requirement. It's something you really want. So what do you think of the article?
I really like the first quote, 4.3 quote. I mean, I thought that was amazing. The 4.4 quote was like completely confusing to me. I had no idea what it meant really, or how it really related to 4.4 there. So I'm not sure if you want to go over that.
Yeah, we can go over that.
The quote itself, sort of.
Do you want to read the quote?
What are you trying to represent? I can read it. Yeah, sure.
Read it.
Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Right. So the matter of the unification of the Creator and divinity that one induces when he has had his fill of yearning and longing is precisely like the underside coupling applying in the birth of a corporal body. It too extends necessarily by cause and effect, meaning the hardening that is a certain measure of longing and yearning, called hardness in the corporal tongue. Then one's seed is also blessed, for it shoots like an arrow, nephesh, soul, shana, year, olam, world. This is the meaning of how is their repentance in the same place at the same time with the same woman, since hey tata, the lower hey, consists of nefesh, shana, and olam. Nefesh is the measure of the longing and yearning. Shana is the changing stimulation that as complete coitus bears the complete measure, the restore past glory, meaning as they were cohesive before they were separated in the corporal world. However, one cannot be ready for this sublime mating, called complete coitus, all at once, rather surely goodness and mercy. There's a lot of words I don't even know, so that's one problem.
So the idea is that there's two things you need. One is that you need this hardness, right, which is this measure of longing and yearning, and you also need the coarseness. And the idea is the coarseness is what makes you feel your current state, and the hardening or the yearning is what makes you feel your future state. And what you need is the combination of them. And then the idea is that it says it shoots like an arrow. So what we talked about, the concept of the arrow, where you pull the arrow backwards. And then when it's reached its complete tension, that's when you release it, and it actually, reaches the target. So it says that your state has to be aligned in three things. It has to be aligned in the soul, the year, and the world. As it says, in the same place, right, which is world, at the same time, which is year, with the same woman, which is the soul, which is the desire. So what you basically need to able to cross the barrier, you need to have that yearning, right? You have to be like, I really want to cross the barrier. You need a desire, which is that coarseness, to actually allow you to actually cross the barrier. So it's not just enough to say, oh, I really want to cross the barrier. You need sort of the coarseness is like the ego, the tool that you actually have to actually do something with. So it's not just, you can't just say, oh, I really want to reach somewhere. You need the skills, the ability, the qualities to actually do it. And that's the coarseness. So you've got the yearning, which is the longing, the hardness, the goal you want to reach, right? You've got the desire, the coarseness to actually able to reach there. And then you've got the combination between those two, which is at the same time, which means that you are, you've got all the desire and all the longing simultaneously together. And that's the idea. So you've got the soul and you've got the world. The world is, it's called desire. The world is called desire. You've got the soul, which is the longing, the hardness, and you've got the year, which is the combination between the soul and the world.
Why is the goal hardness? Like, how does that relate? Hardness. What is this hardness?
So hardness, the idea is that, the point in the heart, right, which is basically the soul, is the hardness. It's called in Hebrew kashiyut. So you've got aviyut, which is coarseness, and you've got kashiyut, which is hardness. So you've got the hardness, or you could call it willpower, of the person. You've got the coarseness of the person, and when you combine them together, that is the vessel between them.
Yeah, it's just weird how they call it hardness. Hardness is supposedly supposed to be the right line here. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, I don't know. I don't know why they aviyut. I'm sorry, kashyut. Not sure why it's kashyut. Well, how does that relate with sort of the right line, with this having that goal in your mind?
So the idea is, you could say that, Bala Salam says in Talmud Esrei Part 4 that you can have a vessel without a screen, but you can't have a screen without a vessel. So the idea is that if you just have the right line by itself, then you're basically in a situation where you really want something, but you'll never actually reach it. So if someone just has the right line, they're like, oh, I really want to cross the barrier, like in phase 2. Oh, I really want to cross the barrier. I'll connect with a friend, and I'll cross the barrier. It's like, that's very nice that you have the right line, but it's not, as you said, it's not hardness. It's just longing. It's sort of longing in potential. It's just sort of like, oh, I really want it to happen. When you take the coarseness and you inject that into that yearning, then it becomes hardness. And that's the concept of, you've got the vessel and you've got the screen. And the vessel's coarseness is in the screen. That's what makes it hard. So normally you would think of yearning as something very, like the opposite of hard. But that's precisely the problem. If it's weak, if it's very flexible, you could say, then a person never reaches what he wants. It's only when, it's like when someone sort of is very persistent, right? That's hardness. He's very hard. He's not allowing people to just bend him. So normally if someone just has a desire to do something, he's like, oh, I really want to do something. And someone says to him no. He's like, okay, I guess I won't do it. What is he lacking? He's lacking that hardness, that willpower, that ability to say, no, I'm going to reach it because I want it. So the hardness of that yearning and longing is what actually allows you to actually reach something. You've got the hardness. You're like, no, I want to reach my dreams. I'm going to get it done. And that's why it's called hardness.
Yeah, but that's kind of like desire, though. Isn't that like that desire, that force? I'm going to do it, and I'm going to...
So you've got the coarseness is your current state, right? Let's say you're good at something. That's the coarseness. But the yearning to be in your next state, in your future, that's not the coarseness. That's the hardness. You can have someone who's really good at what they do, and they have no desire to move forward. That means they've got great coarseness. You've got someone who really wants to do something, but has no ability to reach it. And that's, you could say, just, called like a wanting, a potential yearning. You've got hardness, where someone's got the skill set, right? But he also has the desire to actually move into the future. And that desire to move into the future is the hardness. You could say the hardness is resistant to the person's desire to stay where they are.
I'm just, I'm thinking always coarseness is desire, is that force. It's that desire that pushes you towards the goal. So,
no. No,
I don't know what coarseness is. Maybe you can explain what coarseness is.
When we say desire, there's two ways. You can either say, I desire something, or I have a desire for something, right? When we say coarseness, it's I have a desire for something. It's something in the present, right? Like if someone's married, they have the desire of being married. But if someone wants to get married, right, then they don't actually have the desire to get married. They don't actually have the desire to be married. They have a desire to want to be married. That's a yearning, that's a longing, that's a future state, not their current state. So when we say desire, we're talking about the state of someone's current desires. We're not talking about when someone says, I desire something. If someone says, I desire something, they're basically declaring that they don't currently have that desire. Right? They want to acquire that desire. They want to acquire that coarseness, but they don't currently have that coarseness. That's why they say, I desire something, which means they don't currently have that desire. They don't currently have that coarseness. They're wanting to acquire a new coarseness. That process of acquiring a new coarseness is called longing and yearning.
So regarding collecting vacant space vessels and coarseness, what are we collecting? Desires and potential?
So we're collecting desires and potential, yes. It's like we're collecting yearning and longing that we want to afterwards become coarseness.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So coarseness is the present, you could say,
yes.
Right? It's whatever you have, whatever coarseness a person has is exactly what he has in his life. That's his coarseness, right? So somebody wants to collect more coarseness. you know, via vacant space vessels. That's what does it mean to collect more coarseness? You can collect, you're collecting more. I'm not really sure because it's
you're collecting more desire.
Can you say that it's a prayer before prayer kind of situation? Because you collect, you know, if you don't have something and you're like, I don't have a desire for it, because I obviously don't have it, right?
Right.
So can you say that I am desiring to have that desire?
Yes, it's called a prayer.
Well, it's prayer before prayer.
So,
but
I'd say that the process of the longing and yearning is a prayer, and the prayer before the prayer is
the same thing.
have that longing.
They're the same words. Longing and yearning. Those are the same words.
Right.
Okay,
the longing is the prayer.
And yearning is, you're saying something else?
No, I'm saying longing and yearning is the same thing.
Oh, okay, yearning. Okay. Yearning and longing is the prayer. That's the right line.
No, that's the left line.
That's the left line.
Because the whole idea is you make a prayer on the left because the idea is that you have a present state, you have your future state. There's a distance between them. That distance is called a prayer.
Right.
On the right line, there's no prayer. On the right line, you have what you want.
Okay, that is right, because there's no lack there, right?
You're already there, right? In the right line, the present equals the future. In the left line, the present equals the past.
Okay, so I'm trying to define coarseness and how it relates to vacant space vessels. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And
okay. So it's like this in any degree. In any degree, if you want more coarseness, right, you look at your current state, which is your current coarseness. You realize what you don't have, right? And then you long and yearn for that coarseness from your future state.
Okay, so you long and yearn for that coarseness from your future state. Okay. Okay. But that's collecting vacant space vessels? That's energy, forces?
Yeah, exactly. You're collecting that coarseness.
That's coarseness. But why do I want to collect coarseness? If we said that coarseness is the present equal to the past, why do I want that?
Well, because you want to reach that state where that becomes your coarseness. Right? If you've got someone who's on a coarseness of x, he wants to reach a coarseness of x plus 1. Right? That prayer is that sort of separate, that sort of distance between the x plus 1. When he reaches that x plus 1, then it suddenly becomes x again.
Right. Okay. I'll think about it more.
Yeah, no problem.
So Zakai, coarseness is it's.
Caesar, we can't hear you. You're gonna have to raise your voice.
Okay, can you hear now?
It's still very low. Try again.
Okay, no?
Yes. Yeah, that's good.
Is the question is the amount of, all desires you get, all along your life, and, but you're not conscious of that, and, it's there. And when you want to use it, you just, try to be conscious of this question. You use it, as a tool, whatever, Is there some?
The coarseness is your current desire. Right? Whatever state you're in, that is your coarseness. Coarseness is your current desire.
But this desire is weak. Let's say the desire now is weak. You don't have the desire. So when you get more coarseness, if let's say this.
Right. Let's say, for example, you want a car. Right. That means you currently don't have coarseness for a car. Because if you had coarseness for a car, you would already have a car. Right? So what you want is longing and yearning of a car, which means it's longing and yearning of the coarseness for a car. When you have that desire for a car, when you have that coarseness for a car, you'll have a car. So until you have a car, that means you're lacking that longing and yearning. The problem is that the longing and yearning has to be with details in it. It has to be hard. It has to be something that you know why you want it, right? You know why you're going to get it, right? And the problem is that most people, when they have a longing and yearning, it's very abstract. It's like, oh, I'd love to cross the barrier. Do you know what the barrier is? No. Do you know what bestowal is? No. Do you know what reception is? No. I just want to cross this barrier that someone called something a barrier. That's not going to work. There's no hardness there. There's no details there. You have to add details. You have to collect discernments to turn that longing and yearning into hardness. You have to give it matter. You have to sort of give it strength. When you give that strength, then what it does is it basically attracts it to you, and then you get that coarseness.
Okay, thanks.
You know, Zach, I could tell you right now from past experiences with certain things. I mean, this is completely unconscious, obviously, like with things that I've done in the past. It was through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. You know, and I could say to you, and that's kind of been my experience, you know, pretty much my whole life. It's, you know, when I wanted something, I basically would come to the brink and just be like, you know, I would be so frustrated from so many past, you know, failures, you know, and I would keep on going. And then, but all those experiences would build that coarseness. There
would be those discernments that you collected.
Right. It's all those frustrations and blood and sweat and tears that pulling through it. Would add those details, right? Would add that coarseness. Exactly. And then, but it also
that hardness. It would make it hardness. You'd be working on the hardness there, not on your coarseness. Your coarseness is what you currently have.
Yeah.
What you're working towards in the hardness, you're injecting the coarseness into that yearning and making it into hardness.
Wait a second, though. I'm injecting the current coarseness into the hardening and making it harder and harder?
Exactly.
And then what? As I make it harder and harder and harder, the result of that is more coarseness?
The result is that it brings your future, it attracts your future into your present. And then you gain that coarseness.
I'll gain the coarseness. So it's like an infinite loop. So what? I use my current coarseness to inject into my right line, into the hardening, which is what? Which strengthens the goal, strengthens my goal.
Exactly.
It strengthens my faith.
Yes.
And as I strengthen my faith and as I strengthen the goal that I actually really wanted in the first place, then that as a result of that, I get the coarseness. I bring.
You drag it down. It's like think of faith as the clouds, right? And think of coarseness as the ground. So most people, what do they want to do? They want to leave their coarseness. They want to leave their ground and fly to the sky, right? Those are called dreamers. Why do you call them dreamers? Because they don't want to be tied to the ground. They want to just float up. The problem is that floating up doesn't actually bring it down. It doesn't actually allow you to do anything with it. That's the problem with normal faith. Because there's no details in it, it doesn't actually serve you very much. It's like emotional, but doesn't actually give you any results. What you do is you take the ground and you start injecting it. You take sort of the dust and you inject it into the cloud. What does it do? It makes the cloud heavy. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, how does rain work? Right? Rain works where the water from the ground rises into the clouds, right? And then because it becomes so heavy, it rains. Mm-hmm. Right? So you have to do the same concept. That's how you move to the future.
Now, but the thing is that
that's why rain is called blessing.
That's a really great example with the rain. I'd like to remember that one, but that's a great one with the rain. Because it really kind of talks about this process. But my question is that, you know, the desire itself, the coarseness itself is what brings situations to you. So we're saying here that to build that coarseness, that right line needs to be strengthened first. And then once that coarseness is built, then it starts attracting those situations, those things that you want.
So it's like your coarseness is your current desires, your current state of desires, your current state of affairs.
Which brings certain events and certain things.
Exactly. It attracts things to you that you currently desire.
Exactly.
Right? The hardness, or you could say your faith, is your
faith. Let's say faith. It's just a better word. It's right line faith. Okay.
Right line
hardness
faith.
To me just sounds so weird. I don't know. It just.
Well, think of it. What does hardness mean?
I don't know.
It's got coarsenesses in it. Right? It sounds strong.
Well, when you're saying a cloud gets harder, I can understand that. Like exactly. That makes sense to me.
Right? So the idea is that your faith becomes hard. And what happens when something becomes hard?
Stronger.
But what happens? It starts to fall.
It starts to fall. It gets heavy and just starts to fall.
Exactly. It comes to the ground, right? The whole idea is that the sky is something very abstract, high, like we say, high in the sky. The ground is where you are. This is,
Foundations. Yeah,
right? It's like a foundation. This is where you are. You should understand you're on the ground. And you've got someone, normally when they have faith, it's like, oh, I'm floating in the sky, right? His head is in the clouds, as we say, right? And everyone says, no, you should bring put your head on the ground. So the idea, though, is to raise the ground, you could say, to the clouds. Like take like water, right? Which is on the ground, the lower water, which is the lower hay. And you raise it to the upper hay. You raise it to the clouds. And then what it does is that it rains on you. And we call that blessing. Right?
Once it starts raining, that's sort of the once it starts.
That's giving you your future state.
That's brilliant. Okay, that's good. Now, again, back to vacant space vessels again. A sort of like collecting vacant space vessels is collecting coarseness. Collecting coarseness is going to basically harden. It's going to harden that right line. Is that what we're trying to do? We're collect vacant space vessels to harden that faith, that make it stronger.
Exactly.
Yes?
Yeah, because you can see how, like, normally, let's say you say, I want to be rich. Well, that's very nice. And then it's like, but it's not working for me. Well, why is it not working for you? Because you lack discernment on why you want to become rich, how you're going to become rich, what are the avenues, how you can actually get it done, the effort that you're going to be doing. All those are coarseness that you're going to inject into that future, into that hardness.
But I'm saying again, regarding vacant space vessels, I'm sorry to hammer on this point.
That's really fine.
Vacant space vessels has energy to it. Where are the details? Where is the details in that? Vacant space vessels is desire, it's coarseness, it's power.
Right. Where do we collect it from?
Huh?
Where do we collect it from?
We collect them from situations, from movies,
Which are details.
How is that details? Movie. Well, I mean, like,
In a movie, you don't see details?
No, there's details, but I'm saying, like, so I don't know, give me an example. Like, let's say, watching Suits, right?
Yes, I'm watching Suits, and let's say, for example, I want to build a business.
Yeah.
And I look at Suits, and I see the whole, fight between, the members there trying to, get their name on the wall.
Right.
Right? Yeah. And, like, you're at interconnection, you're like, what do I need my name on the wall? That's useless. I don't need a name on the wall. But what you do is you watch that thing, you watch them fighting that energy of like, oh, and they want the name on the wall, and you're like, why do they want the name on the wall? And you start to sort of see the details of what is driving them. Why do they want the name on the wall? And then you understand that it's got nothing to do with the name on the wall. The name on the wall is the result. That's not actually what they care about.
Right.
They care about the prestige. They care about the power, the acquiring of
validation. Exactly, Mary. I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So they don't really care. Like if you just put their name on the wall, that's not what would do it for them. If they want the name on the wall to represent their power.
Right.
Right. If someone just sprayed on the wall their name, they'd be like, that doesn't do anything for me. They want other people to see the name of the wall. They want themselves to see the name of the wall and say, this is mine. I put my name on it. That's what we also say when someone names the creator. You're putting your name on it. You're making it your own. Right? And those are the discernments that you collect. Then you can actually get to the point where you actually want a name on the wall.
So is that it? Is those details that you basically, when you go through that process of like, because I've been doing that, right? So I've been going through sort of looking at life and experiences and sort of what drives people and like what is their desire, their inner desire that's motivating them. And of course, I don't have that desire, but I look at it and I try to figure it out, and I can see right through them. Now, but by me seeing that, how does that sort of build my coarseness?
Well,
that makes coarseness?
Yeah, it's building your coarseness, because what happens from the thing, because you're learning of why they want it. So at the beginning, you're just like, no, that doesn't sound like a great idea. Why do I need a name on the wall? Stupid, right? So you have no desire, no coarseness to have a name on the wall. By you learning what drives them to want their name on the wall, that attracts it to you. Like,
Oh, really? Just by learning it?
Yeah, just by learning,
Really?
just collecting.
Because I don't have that desire initially. So you're saying that just by me going through it, I start to actually want those things?
Exactly.
Really?
You start to understand the idea behind it. So you don't really care about the name on the wall.
No.
But
it's the inner desire that...
The inner desire, it's what drives
that root desire, right.
That entices you, it attracts to you.
Right, that's what I want.
And that's what you get. And in the end, you might actually have your name on the wall.
Right. And I don't even care, just there. Just happens to me.
Exactly.
Because
it's a result.
The Coarseness was built.
Exactly.
From that hardening, we could say. From that.
Exactly.
I see. Okay.
I have a question regarding this, these examples, and where does clothing of it, like the opposite of the coarseness, come in this example of the rain and the clouds being over there and so forth, and someone looking at the clouds and saying, I would like that. Where is the clothing involved in this?
So hardness is clothing. So you've only got two concepts here. You've got coarseness, egoism, right? You've got clothing, which is altruism, hardness, yearning. Those are your two concepts you're dealing with. So it's the same, like names, like different names for the same thing. So you could say egoism, altruism. You could say coarseness and hardness. You could say current desires, future desires. You could say optimism. You could say pessimism and optimism.
So someone that has the details, like you were saying this example of someone, oh, I wish I was that, but they don't have the hardening of it, the coarseness of it. How does the picture look when it's the opposite? Meaning,
when someone has coarseness without any desire.
Exactly. Yes. What is their train of thought?
Well, they just don't want to move forward. They just want to stay where they are. It's like someone, for example, who gets to the point where his name is on the wall, and that's it. That's all he wanted. All he wanted in life was to have his name on the wall. So he's reached this new, he had this longing, and he put the coarseness into that hardness, make it happen. And that's it. That's all he wanted in life. He just wanted his name on the wall, and like the rest of his life just stays there. There's no longing anymore. There's no hardness. There's no future. There's only the present.
So there's laziness. That would explain like laziness. Okay, because they don't really have yet something to look, a goal, something that's to add this coarseness to.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the next question that I had is, there's a cascading of, before it reaches to matter, you can have the thought and emotion and so forth. So looking at these vacant space vessels, how can one get I guess in the most speediest way, in the fastest way, how can one get the needed coarseness and hardness the fastest without needing to materialize anything to push them? You know what I'm asking?
That's why we watch entertainment. Mm-hmm. The whole creation of entertainment is to serve this purpose, that you don't actually have to experience something in real life for you to actually get the desire for it. So normally what happens is that you actually have to go through a real life event to change your desires. And the idea here, you've got a myriad of opportunities to attract situations that you'll never experience, but still actually get those desires. So it's like you could have someone who doesn't, never seen a law firm, doesn't have no clue what actually happens there, and probably would never put his foot in a law firm. But then he watches Suits, and then he learns so much about like how they work and their desires behind it and everything. He was able to get those experiences without ever experiencing it in his physical life.
You know what I've noticed, that guy, from what I've been doing, just kind of going, looking, just really going deep in people's inner desires and kind of seeing what motivates them. And I got to say that the common denominator, that from my experience, is validation. That to me is almost the common denominator with everything. To me, it's about sort of proving to the world, which is, try obviously to prove to themselves that there's something, that there's somebody.
The self-worth, yes.
And that's the common denominator.
Definitely. It's all about self-worth.
You know?
And that self-worth can go over multiple things, right? It can go from, what we said, having children, right? And it can go, to money, like how much money do you have, right? Like it says about, Yaakov that he, Esav wanted to kill Yaakov and he sent his son to kill Yaakov. And then Yaakov said, just take away my money. And it's as if I'm considered dead. Since a poor person can't actually do anything because he has no money, he has no power, right? So the sense of self can go from prodigy to money, and it could go then to honor. Someone with honor says, what's the point if you have money? What matters is the influence you have on people. And someone in knowledge could say, what does it matter the influence you have on people? What matters is how much you know and how much you've acquired knowledge and understanding, right? And then you could have someone with internal power that says, what does it matter if you have all that knowledge if you don't have the power to handle situations?
But my question is sort of now that I've sort of figured out sort of the common denominator, desire, inner desire with everything. It's like, well, almost like I feel like my work is done. It's like, in every situation, it's like, I see right through it, and I'm like, yeah, it's just for them to validate themselves in every situation.
So that's very abstract. You need more details to it. So when you say validation, that's very nice, but there are sensations and there's details in that validation.
Like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like people, it's what other detail is, what more details are there than the guy just wants to feel like he's worth something? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well, you can't just go to the person and say, you're worth something.
I don't say that to him. I'm just saying this is what I observe.
But even, like, let's say I told you, it's like, oh, it's just about validation. Moshe, I validate you, you're awesome. And you're like, that doesn't work for me. Well, why not? I just, you need validation. I gave you validation, you're awesome. Why is that not enough for you?
Well, it's maybe because they don't see it that way. Maybe they can't figure it out that's actually their root problem. They don't see that. I see that. But they're maybe looking at it from a shallower place.
But even for you, if I just say to you that you're awesome,
right. That doesn't do anything for me. Fantastic.
Why not?
There's no details.
Exactly.
So what? So it's about you're awesome because of this, this, and this.
There's details to it. There needs to be details there for the hardness. Right? There needs to be details in that hardness.
What do you mean in that hardness? Why are we even going into the hardness here?
The hardness is the longing, the yearning.
Well, I'm talking about
what you want. Let's say you want validation, right?
Oh.
So validation,
if I want validation.
is the future, right? If you want validation, it's your future. There'll be a future where you're validated.
Yeah.
That's why you want validation. So it's in your future.
Right.
If you currently had validation, then you wouldn't want validation.
Right.
Right. So you don't have the coarseness of validation.
True.
You want validation, which means you have a yearning for validation, a hardness for validation. How are you going to make that go from potential to actuality?
It's adding more details.
Exactly.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that forget about my desire. I understand adding the details into the hardness. I get that. But I'm saying as far as me going through reality and movies and experiences and things like that, and sort of digging into their inner desires. And what I'm saying is that most of the common denominator desire that I'm seeing is somebody's desire for self-worth, for self-validation.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Why are you collecting those vessels in the first place?
For power.
For power or for self-validation?
Do I need self-validation?
Yeah.
Maybe I do need self-validation.
Right. So then you actually need details on that self-validation.
I don't know. I have to think about all this. No, but what I'm saying is, by me going into the inner root, inner desire, by me doing that, those are the things that I see. Are those exposing my weaknesses?
Yes. I'll give you a concrete example, right? I'm at work, and I couldn't care less if I'm successful or not, right? Because I already feel successful. I'm a capitalist. Look, I've got system concepts. Everything's great for me. I'm validated. So it's like, but I've got a job. I need to keep it going. If I'm working, I should probably innovate, right? I've got that abilities and stuff, but I have no desire to innovate. So what I'm going to do, I'm stuck. I have no coarseness, right? And even my hardness is just like lackluster. I can't actually make it happen. I've got no desire to innovate. So what do? I watch different entertainment episodes and stuff of people that really want to make it. They really want to prove to themselves and prove to others that they're worth something. Because I'm just going to live my life and just be a failure and sort of say, well, I just programmed some things and I just did what I was told. It's like, oh, wow, you're just a normal employee. It's like, no, I want to come and say, oh, you know what I did? I did this and I innovated that, right? So I watch other people's desires, since clearly I don't have that desire. I watch other people get all excited and I feel their sense of self shifting and going through all these pains and troubles and tribulations of, will I make it? Will I be successful? Will I be useful? Will I be validated? Am I worth something? I take those desires and I sort of attract them. I'm like, oh, that's why he wants this. Oh, that's why he wants that. Why does he want to be successful? Like I was watching, the other day I was watching the lost interview of Steve Jobs, right? Which is basically 1996, before he even bought Apple, right? And you just see that person, Steve Jobs, in a huge deficiency where he looks at his current company, which is Next, and he's like, there's just not enough coarseness there. It's not going to become what he wants it to be. He looks at Apple, which used to be his company, and he sees it as a dying company. Why? Because they've got no hardness. They've got no longing, no yearning to actually reach something. They're just happy where they are. So you've got these two states. He's got his current company, right, which has a lot of like yearning. They want to be something, but they have no coarseness to actually reach it. You've got this other company, Apple, that has the coarseness, but no longing. So they're basically stagnant, right? What did he do in the end? Apple bought Next. So what did Apple buy?
Coarseness.
No, they had coarseness.
Oh, Apple had coarseness?
Yeah, Apple had coarseness. What did they buy?
They
bought longing, which was at Next. So the longing of Next, the spirit of Steve Jobs and Next, got put back into Apple. And that's how they became so successful.
In that example that you gave me, you said you felt validated in your life already. You don't need to prove anything to anybody. But when you started looking through those desires of when you were watching interviews and movies and stuff like that, and you said that what you were doing were collecting other people's desires for their need for validation. But you felt validated already.
So I attracted new validation.
Oh, new validation?
Yeah.
A greater validation?
Exactly. It's like, oh, Moshe, if I'm not successful at work, I'm nobody. It's like, but Zaka, you helped so many people cross the barrier. Yeah, I know, but I've already done that. So therefore, what have I done lately?
But aren't you kidding yourself? Don't you really? I mean, you can't fool yourself if you feel validated already.
Right. So you're right. So there's a problem. If I'm validated at my core, then therefore, why should I do anything? Right? That's your question.
Exactly.
So the idea is that there are degrees of validation. So now that I've got the internal validation, I'm validated at my core. I'm an awesome person. Now I can branch out to the lower levels of validation. So instead of what normal people do is that they have to go to higher levels of validation, I'm going the opposite way. I'm going back to lower levels of validation and expanding myself there. I'm expanding myself in the lower degrees. Remember, I'm going back to 1.1 and 1.2 and horizontally advancing there.
But you're not emotionally
high degree.
Without being emotionally invested there.
Exactly. You won't see me coming back and saying, oh, Mary, I don't think I'm going to make it. Like, I think I'm not worth anything. So I can feel the deficiencies of needing validation, but it doesn't shake my core since my core is validated so much.
Almost like you're taking on a role.
Exactly.
Well, now that we've dug really deep into this, I think what we've discovered is that at the end of the day, it's that we all want some validation, but on multiple levels. I think that's really what is happening here.
And that is why the pain point of Yosef is validation, because they're the consequence. So the consequence of all the desires is validation. What people want in the end is validation. And that's why Yosef, which represents that consequence, their pain point is validation. Because they feel it more than any of the other classes.
Yeah, but the other classes feel that as well.
But it's hidden for them.
Well, we just discovered it then.
So,
I've
right,
discovered it.
the idea is that you've discovered it, it's still, they have to go through different clothing. So they have to go through different forms that clothe that validation. So with Yosef, they have to deal with the bare metal validation, while Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they deal with it in different clothings. Avram deals with it with the supporting environment, Yitzchak deals with it with expression, and Yaakov deals with his possessions and relationships.
So there's validation on different levels. I guess you could say there's validation of the pain point. So an Avram would need validation of a supporting environment.
Exactly.
I see. So, I mean, this is a great concept. We might have to go into this a little deeper, but this validation concept is amazing, because at the end of the day, I think that is why people want certain things. It's just for validation. And you know, that's the common denominator that's been discovered here. And
remember that the will to receive is called existence from absence.
Mm-hmm.
So what are people trying to constantly do? Convince themselves that they exist, because they actually feel that they're absent.
That they're empty, yeah.
Not that they're empty, but that they don't exist.
Oh, that they don't exist.
Right? And that's why people love to feel pain. Right? Because pain makes you feel alive, makes you feel existing. Because you can't be in pain if you don't exist. But pleasure, we feel that as a facade. We feel that as like, that doesn't mean that I don't exist.
Yeah, you can get pleasure and still not feel validated at all. It doesn't do anything for you.
Right. So pain, that's why it's so easy for people to fall into pain and self-victimization, which is what a shell is, because it makes a person feel alive. But it's a facade. It's not real. But they feel it like, oh, if I'm going through so many trials and tribulations, if I'm going through so many descents, that must mean I'm advancing. The ascent, that doesn't mean I'm advancing. I could be fooling myself. But the descents, you see, I'm advancing. And it's a facade. It's not true.
And one final word before I let everybody else speak. Took over. But so now that we've sort of discovered this whole concept of us wanting to validate ourselves in different aspects of our life, you said that now a Kabbalist will work on his internality, on his validation of his internality, of his greatness, and then work sort of on lower desires, like maybe validate himself, maybe having a family, to feel like, okay.
Exactly.
And then, or maybe, you know, having more money or whatever, a car or whatever.
Or being successful at a job that you couldn't care less about.
Yeah. So, but the root of it all is the first, I think you get as a default that great validation of your internality when you reach end of correction. I think that's set.
It's after end of correction. So you've got, at end of correction, you're dealing with the validation through the light of chaya, which is expression, right? So if you're not expressing yourself, you feel like you don't exist. And if you're expressing yourself, you feel like you exist, right?
Yeah, but that's, okay.
And then you have the next degree, which is the eyes not seen, which is the light of Yechida, which is higher than expression. That's when you feel awesome because you are awesome. You don't actually have to do any expression. You're just strong in the core that you are just an awesome person.
Yeah, but when does the validation of the internality end?
That's when it ends. When you reach the eyes not seen, that's when it ends. You reach the light of Yechida and you're set. You feel just amazing even if you do nothing for the rest of your life.
Still, after end of correction, there's still validation of your internality.
Exactly.
Yes?
You have to go. That's why you have to go through expression.
I see. Okay, yeah, okay, I can see that.
So, Zaka, if someone starts, early work with this issue of validation, so he can grow really fast, right?
So it's not just about I need validation. You need the details. You need the discernments. That's all we say. We advance by collecting discernments.
Like you said, maybe Yosef has a more, inclination to be validated. But, let's say
they feel it more. They're more they're more close to the metal. They don't need an event. They're not like, oh, I need validation because I don't have a supporting environment, Avram. Or I don't feel I don't feel validated because I can't express myself, Yitzchak. I don't feel validated because I don't have relationships and possessions, Yaakov. The Yosef, they feel that they lack validation, but it's got no clothing. It's not like, oh, if I had possessions, I'd feel validated. Oh, if I had a supporting environment, I'd feel validated. Or if I could express myself, I'd feel validated. They feel that validation, sort of raw. Mary, I love that example.
Yeah.
But all those class has this issue about the validation, in low or high degree, Let's say Abraham have, he's confident, but if he has a really issue, it's, about environment, it's a huge issue. It's not about the validation too.
Yeah, it is about validation. But again, it's clothed in that environment.
That's why you said this, there is a degree of validation, right?
Exactly. Mary, do you want to read it out?
Sure. So a Kabbalist is like playing checkers and working your way across the board and getting crowned when you reach the other side, and then being able to turn around and play the rest of the board and capture what you want and move around freely and safely.
Exactly. Yeah. And notice that one of the rules is when you move forward, you can't go backwards until you actually reach the end.
Right.
A question. So after I reach end of correction, I won't care what anyone says about me. So even if someone says, "Oh, you're doing things wrong," or like whatever, like it wouldn't touch me at all.
You'd care what your group, what your environment tells about you. What we say about you, you'll care. But what others say about you, wouldn't care. Because what we will say about you is going to be about your advancement and not about, whether you're successful at life or not.
Thanks.
Yeah, you have to get the crown. And the crown, remember, is the keter, the goal. So you always have to advance towards the goal.
That's that Yechidah, yes?
Exactly. And then it's called that you're free from the angel of death. Right? And you can roam freely. So roam freely doesn't mean you do nothing. Roam freely, now you can deal with any desires you want without feeling that shaking of your sense of self. All right, I think we'll stop here and enter the after party.